For me, in a combat zone or in the military, you don't get to just one day get up and say, you know, it's been great, but I think I'm going to go home. Nobody asked me if I liked what I was doing. Nobody asked me if, you know, I'm paying you to work a couple weeks. What do you think? Want to stick around? Want to go home? You know, it doesn't happen in the military. You don't get to leave. Sometimes you get to shoot back. Not even, sometimes you don't even get to do that. Physically, you have to stay where you're at. One, to do the job. Two, because there are consequences if you leave. But up here, mentally, you learn that you can leave. And for me, as each experience got harder and harder to deal with, I learned that I could kind of shut off my emotions and not hear the screams, smell the smells, go inside myself and just focus on what it is I was doing. And each time that would happen, well, I could do it a little bit more, and a little bit more, until one day you just become so numb, you just don't come back. You just stay. It's a much safer place to be. They have a term in Vietnam for new guys called FNG, that fucking new guy. And it was meant to be a derogatory term and meant to be harsh. Conventional wisdom was that in the first 3 months, you didn't know enough to stay alive and you were a danger to those around you. And you were likely to die in the first 3 months, or the last 3 months. The first 3 months because you didn't know anything, the last 3 months of your tour because you're too cautious and too careful. It was best not to even get to know anyone's name or get too close to them in those first 3 months. And you can imagine being already alone, frightened, in something that you just don't understand and your own people don't want to even talk to you. There's a guy who wrote a book, it's called Achilles in Vietnam. His name is Jonathan Shea. I think it's one of the best books about PTSD that one could read. Central in his experience in working with Vietnam veterans and PTSD is betrayal. Not every veteran will express a sense of betrayal. For me, I felt betrayal deeply. Betrayal can come from a lot of directions. Jonathan Shea used the word themis. Themis comes from the Greek and it means that which is right. Betrayal could be a betrayal of your own personal values, religious values, not shall not kill. The military had its own code of conduct, oftentimes betrayed by the military. But there was more. In Vietnam, betrayal for me came from a president, specifically Lyndon Johnson, who lied about the Tonkin incident, using it as an excuse for bringing the ground troops to Vietnam. 5 successive presidents either intentionally misled or openly lied about the U.S. presence and what we were doing in Vietnam. The Congress of the United States that did not hold the president to account for his actions to prove his case, that there was a reason to send U.S. troops in harm's way. And the nation that did not hold the Congress accountable. And when the war became something different than what they expected it to be, and discovered they were being lied to and wanted out, turned their back on those soldiers. We did our job. We did it very well, actually. The American people lost heart and blamed the soldiers. I feel a profound sense of betrayal through that experience. And I guess what really part of what bothers me today is it appears that my country has not learned anything. The lasting effects of war, it doesn't end just when the bullets stop flying. It's been 40-some years now since I saw it, and it still has impacted my life. When I came back from Vietnam, I didn't know that I was shut down. There was no one for me to talk to. PTSD wasn't even a vocabulary, though the military had known about it since there was a military. They even called it in the Civil War nostalgia, because soldiers wanted to go home. Some did. Some were captured, and they were shot or imprisoned. It would take me about 40 years to get to a place where I realized how much the war was still affected. While I was in Vietnam, a couple of friends of mine said they knew it would help pick up my mood. So we got some vodka. And because we were a medical unit, we had all the ice we needed for our drinks. And because it was the era of the moonwalks, we had lots of tang, so we could make our screwdriver. And they were absolutely right. It changed everything. And alcohol became my drug of choice for the next 24 years. It was the only thing I knew of that would take away the pain, make me feel something more than what I felt I didn't want to feel. After 24 years of using alcohol, I stopped using alcohol. And my expectation was that something would change, life would get better. But after years of sobriety, it appeared that something still wasn't working very well. And it wasn't until about 3 years ago, University of Colorado offered a course on creative writing for veterans. And I took that course. I was just going to write. I wanted to write. And there was 20 veterans, and we, of course, as time progressed, started talking about our experiences. And it was the first time I had ever shared about my experiences. It was the first time I had heard others' experiences. It was an honor to be a part of that group and to hear them share openly. For some very first time, we had veterans from all eras, World War II, Korea, those some served beyond conflict. 5 of them were Vietnam vets, combat vets. After the class completed, we had a reading at the Boulder bookstore. 9 of us read our stories, which again was a great experience. One of the guys in the class came up to me and said, you know, Bob, I've been diagnosed with PTSD. I have a rating of 100% disability. I just heard your story, and I think you need to talk to someone. And that started me on my road. I went to the Vets Center here in Boulder, and met with a psychologist who happened to also be a Vietnam veteran, a combat veteran, and had just worked the previous 3 years for Carson, primarily with medics. So he looked at me when I walked in and he simply asked me one question. And he said, did you say you're wrong? That just stunned me because up here, of course, down here, the answer was, no, I didn't. I shouldn't. Which is, of course, absurd. About 2 years ago, I met a young woman who was just finishing up a master's degree in, never mind Afghanstan, which is probably the right place. She was just finishing up a master's degree in psychology, and she told me that her father was a medevac pilot in Vietnam. And these are some courageous people. nothing but deepest respect for men and pilots. When she was 12 years old, he took his life. The reality is that today, every single day, today's group, between 18 and 21 veterans of all eras will commit suicide. Since Vietnam, more veterans have taken their lives by suicide than died in combat in the war. That's the impact war has. And it's not just on us and our families and our children. One of the lasting effects of Vietnam is not just PTSD, but it's such as called Agent Orange. Agent Orange was a defoliant. They used actually about 6 different defoliants in Vietnam. But Agent Orange was especially harsh. It had a poison in it called dioxin. It was very effective at doing what it was supposed to do, and that's kill trees, living things. We hear about it in terms of its effect on soldiers. I myself, well, if you go to the website, you can find that Agent Orange now has about a list of about 12 different disease processes that it's connected to, including cancers and heart disease and birth defects. You may have heard in the last couple of weeks of the United States signing an agreement with Vietnam to help clean up dioxin and Agent Orange. Today, right now, there are some 3 million Vietnamese people, second and third generation since the war, who were born with incredible birth defects. Wars go on. Wars continue. They don't just end. And this one is from John Kennedy. War will exist until that distant day when the conscientious objector enjoys the same reputation and prestige that the warrior does today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bob. 10 has arrived. Thank you for coming. So Tim, you are